Hello, I'm Emma Martin of Granola Gear. If you're new here, I am so excited for you to spend a little time with me talking about Broke Girl knitting. If you've returned, I greatly appreciate it. I am very much a frugal knitter, I will have to say. There are a lot of tools I've not invested in until very recently, and I've been knitting for a handful of years now. I definitely have learned a lot about where you should spend your money and where you shouldn't, and I've managed to avoid, in many cases, making the purchase. I'm an avoider of the money spending overall. I don't like to dish it out. In some cases because I really haven't had the money for it, and in some cases just because I didn't see the reason. So I wanted to go through where how you can save your money overall, where you should spend it, where you probably shouldn't bother. I'll go through tools, supplies, patterns, all that. So thank you for joining me. I'm so excited to get into it. So the first thing I wanted to cover was tools. And what is the basic tool of knitting that everyone needs? Needles. If there is one place, I will say, to spend your money, it is on your needles. That is the first big thing I spent money on, and I do not regret it in the slightest. If you don't want to spend money, you can absolutely get like thrifted knitting needles or really cheap straight needles. That's easy peasy. But pretty quickly, if this is something you want to keep doing, you're going to find you need circular needles. And buying circular fixed needles gets expensive really quickly. You're going to want different size cords, you're going to want different size needles. That ends up being a lot. I highly recommend you buy some form of interchangeable needles. I bought my interchangeable needles right at the beginning of my knitting journey because it was something I decided I wanted to spend money on and it made sense. And since then, I have only bought a few other needles, and just because I thought it would make things easier for me or for something specific. I needed smaller needles for socks, so I have 3 different types of fixed sock needles. I really, realistically, could have only bought one, but I chose to buy more. So that was a special thing. And then much later on, I've decided to invest in a few extra tips and only one extra cord for my interchangeable set outside of what came with it. So I highly recommend it. You can purchase a really cheap set on Amazon that's no brand for $30. I don't know anything about those. I believe there's some reviews on YouTube. I'm sure there's reviews on Amazon. But it is possible to get a set for about $30. If you want to buy something that's a little nicer, a little more trusted, but still not crazy, crazy expensive, you can buy a Knit Pick set for $75. But what I would really recommend, and has actually gotten cheaper since I bought mine, is the ChiaoGoo needles. I spent $120 on mine, but they are now $100 on Amazon. I genuinely don't think you really would need anything else. I know $100 is a lot, but for me going into it, I was like, okay, this is the $100 I'm going to spend on needles, period. You do not need more than one set of interchangeable needles. There are absolutely people who have them, but you do not. You can buy that one set and you'll be set. I literally bought one singular cord to add on to what they gave me in the set. And that was within the last 2 months. Just because I had a lot of projects going on, I decided I'd spend that money. And I bought these needles 3-4 years ago. So really, I think any set is good. Any set of interchangeables is good and will save you money in the end because you're not buying a whole bunch of different needles. I would recommend, if there's one place you're investing, it should be your needles. But that's that. So the next tool item I will go on to is generally notions. Notions are the little things that you use in what you're doing. Stitch markers, you don't need anything. You can use scrap yarn. You can just tie a little knot and use that. Easy peasy, basically free. You can use string, you can use thread, whatever you want, and you won't need different sizes or anything. If you want to buy something a little more formal, I would recommend buying 1,000 light bulb safety pins. Don't put in stitch markers on Amazon, just the safety pins. And you get 1,000 of them, which will last you for literally the rest of your life for $9. I bought them for something totally different. I bought it for hang tags and like price tags for clothing I was selling many years ago. And I still have basically a full bag, and I use it for all of my stitch markers. And if I need to differentiate one, I just tie a piece of string to it. And I remember that that color is marker 1. So that is, you never need to buy stitch markers. They're cute, they're pretty, they're fun. You honestly don't need to buy them at all. Yeah. So light bulb safety pins, highly recommend. The next thing is a yarn winder, like the cake winder, and a Swift. I did not buy a Swift until the last couple months. You really don't need it. You can use chair, whatever. Easy peasy, don't need it. Cake winder, I have mine mostly because of unraveling sweaters, and that was easier for me. You get one for $20, the Knit Picks one, totally fine. You do not need one, period. If you really want to wind balls into cakes, or you are buying hanks that are the twisted ones and you need to wind them into something, wind them into a ball by your hand. It's fine. But if you want to make it a center pull cake, you can look up a tutorial for Nostepin, I believe it is, Nostepinne, spelling bee. And that will show you, and you can do this on like a stick or whatever, like something straight. You can wind by hand a center pull ball, and that's totally fine. You do not need a yarn winder. So that's that. And then the last little notion thing is stitch holder. You'll see a lot of people with like the stretchy tubing stuff. Didn't buy that till like last week, personally, after a couple of years. It's cool to have, but you don't need it. I generally still use for everything just scrap yarn. I mean, maybe it takes 2 minutes longer. Oh well. I got time. That doesn't mean I got money, but I got time to put my needles on stuff. For me, that was just, it made more sense. So those are all the tools, inexpensive options, and where not to spend your money. Probably don't bother buying a Swift, maybe not a cake winder. Those are things you can buy way later on. So next up is yarn. My big recommendation is unraveling sweater yarn. I have a couple informational videos about how to do that and where to find sweaters and all of that. I definitely think it's the best way to get high quality yarn for really cheap. Of course, it's going to depend on the thrift stores and the sweaters you can find near you, but I've lived in Southern California and I've lived in New England, and I've found sweaters that I'm happy to unravel in both places. Especially even if you're looking for just acrylic yarn, $5 sweater versus one $5 ball of yarn that's like a fourth of the amount, a fifth of the amount, totally worth it in my opinion. You can also definitely find yarn at thrift stores. Sometimes it's a good price, sometimes it's not. I've in the past even just bought a bag of like assorted acrylic yarns. And if you're not looking for anything crazy, that's great to play around with, learn some stuff, and then you can get into the fancy things if you want. But you can definitely also, depending on where you are and what you have at your thrift store, you can buy fancier stuff. This is hand-dyed mini skeins, this sweater, and I got this at the thrift store. The yarn at least. So it's definitely possible. It just depends on where you are and what you have. So yeah, the other places you could definitely check out Facebook Marketplace. Sometimes people have lots. Sadly, when older people pass away, sometimes they just have a big bucket of yarn and somebody's just trying to get rid of it for $25. You could probably buy a big tote. So yeah, check Facebook Marketplace, check eBay, but I don't think you'd have as much luck there just because people source for like vintage and nice yarns there sometimes, so you might not have as much luck. But you can try. Ask friends and family. People have started knitting or crocheting and just totally dropped it. You might have some skeins lying around. And then for places I'd recommend buying yarn, Love Crafts is great. They always have sales. They have tons of stuff. Their in-house paint box line is great. They have great cotton. They have some lower cost wools, some nice acrylics, and a ton of good colors. I know Knit Picks Wool of the Andes is a great wool option. Or I like getting drops from Wool Warehouse as well. Really high quality stuff. They have sales all the time. Every couple of months it rotates what they have a sale on. So if you're wanting something specific, just wait 6 months and it'll probably be on sale again. So those are my recommendations for yarn. Next, patterns. My favorite place to get patterns, and I know it's not super user friendly, is Ravelry. You can sort by what's free. and you'll have thousands and thousands of options. That is like, I think, the best way. And there's the most information on patterns and all that. There's also Ribbler. Ribbler is a great pattern database. They have tons of free patterns as well. They have great tutorials, and their whole system for all that is awesome. There are also tons of yarn brands will pay designers to make a pattern for them, and then they will give it away for free. Usually it's promoting some type of yarn, a new collection, a new type, or whatever. So if you go, a couple are Hobby has a bunch. Lovecrafts also has a bunch. Drops has a bunch. A lot of those are on Ravelry. Yarnspirations has a ton of free patterns. We Are Knitters and Wool and the Gang both have free patterns. Some of those also have paid patterns, but you can sort by free, and there's tons and tons. There's another website called All Free Knitting that has lots of knitting patterns as well. And one thing that I think people don't realize, if you live in a place with a nice library, I've lived in places that don't have nice libraries, but I currently live in the city, so I have a library card, and my library card is free. They have tons of pattern books. Even like pretty current ones, like I could check out 52 Weeks of Socks, which, if you don't know, is like the sock knitting book. I also own it because it's amazing. But there are tons of pattern books out there. You could look into a pattern that you're interested in a book ahead of time online, and then check the book out from the library. Check yours out, see if they have that kind of thing. I think it's a really great resource, and it gives you access to patterns you'd otherwise have to pay for. So definitely look into that. But those are the big places I'd look for free patterns. So this has been a quick run through of ways to knit on the cheap. I hope you enjoyed it. If you're interested in unraveling sweater yarn, I do have those videos on my channel. There's a playlist of how to find a good sweater to unravel and how to unravel it, and a few other things if you're interested. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed. If you do, please give me a little like and a subscribe. I'd really appreciate it. And I hope you have a great day. Thank you.